Hi, welcome everyone to our class in how to learn Torah in depth, and we are really in the depth. So we're holding now in Shittas Rambam. And that's going to impact, we said, on how people learn the Torah and how people learn the Shulchan Aruch. Up to this point, we've been learning, like the Rif, Rashi, Rabbeinu Tam, and the Rosh, that the argument between Reb Papa and Reb Huna was that Reb Papa said that Kesef and Metaltal Subin and Meitav all equal partners, and Rav Huna disagreed when it came to Metaltalin. He said Metaltalin is only given when you don't have Kesef and Meitav. So, i.e., when I try to define Meitav, this magic word in the Torah, what did it mean? So Reb Papa said, well, Meitav is Kesef and all Metaltalin, and Meitav Karka. Those are the three things that fall into the getter of Meitav. Meitav Karka Pasuk, and then the two other very good things is Kesef and Metaltalin, because all Metaltalin are equal. Now, Rav Huna disagreed, and he said Metaltalin is not called Meitav, and therefore it's only given when you don't have Kesef and Meitav. That's how the Rosh and the Rif, Rabbeinu Tam, all those people learned that. And the Rosh just added the halachas like Reb Papa. Okay, now some people we read in the Torah and in the Shulchan Aruch want to push that into the text. I say push into the text. That's a loaded term. It may fit there nicely. It may fit there with dochuk, but that's a discussion that we're sort of going to be involved in. But whatever it is a group of people that want to say that the Rambam really is saying nothing new, and he's just holding Reb Papa like we, and the text is talking about a special case. Either the Sma says the Mazik's not around, or it's just to tell you in the Torah that we don't listen to the Nizak when he yells out Meitav. Okay, that's one set of people who are just talking on the Torah, the Shulchan Aruch, and also the Rambam. The other group wants to learn the Rambam Dafka, that he says when the Mazik has to pay and he has Metaltalin and he has Meitav is the last choice. Okay. So here we have variations on the theme how it works. Okay. Not to confuse the issue too much, we're going to do three different variations. The important thing to note here is that the way to put Meitav in last place, or to put Metaltalin before Meitav, is going to come from Balchov, the din in Balchov. So just in Balchov we have a text which we didn't go through together, but the Tosfos brought it down, and it's in Kesuvos. It doesn't seem that people are arguing about it. I say that rather guardedly, but there we see that Kesef has a precedent over Karka. That means if the Lova has Kesef and Karka, he must give Kesef. So the question is whether that preference impacts on our case in Ezekiel, and that's going to be the real question. The Rosh went out of his way to say that these two cases are not analogous. That the Balchov, the reason why the Malva can demand money is because the Malva gave him money, so he's a right to give it back, and that's not in the case of Nezikin. So the Rosh split the two cases off, the Balchov and Nezikin, and therefore Nezikin will have that din. All three things are equal, and it's only in Balchov where we see that there's a precedent for Kesef over Karka. Okay, now the Beis Yosef, when he read the Torah, wanted to say that it was that you want to read the Torah Dafka, that you give Kesef or Metaltalin before Meitav, and he said we got that from Balchov. That's what he said. Even though the Torah wanted to make a distinction, excuse me, even though the Rush wanted to make that distinction between the two cases, the Tur doesn't. Okay, so that's where we are holding in the larger picture of things. Now, we're going to do the Shur. We're in the middle of Shach, actually, but I'd like to just integrate a little bit of Derek Tefunos here because it's very important that we recognize the form of the learning process. As I said before, I mean, I saw this little thing about making a legal brief, and they really described this form. You have to first say your subject matter. You have to bring the proofs why the case should go your way, and then you have to bring up the other side's reasons why it should go the other way and disprove them. That's basically the method that we're using, the Talmudic method. You have proofs and you have steers. How you do it is this very interesting setup that the Ramchal gave us. It's one of the geniuses of the Ramchal that he's able to categorize things so strongly and so briefly. So if you remember, the Ramchal said that you really, his basic system is you have statements and you have proofs. And the process of Mas and Matan is evaluating those proofs, really. He says if a statement doesn't have a proof, then we don't know if it's true or not. So we're involved in making statements and bringing proofs. And not only bringing proofs, and the opposite thing, of course, would be to remove a proof, because he says in the beginning of Derek Tefunos that the idea is that everything is up front. Whenever he explains that whenever something is debatable, it means it's debatable. It means it's not obvious. If it was obvious, they wouldn't having a discussion about it. So since it's not obvious, you'll have two sides of the coin. And he says even one person can bring up objections to his own side, or another person, doesn't really matter. But since it's a debatable issue, so there'll be two sides, and what we're going to do is analyze the proofs for and against, and then decide on the basis of the evidence which is the truth and which is not the truth. So if you remember, when it came to the rayas for and against, there were three basic boxes: rayas misat teva, haskama, and hekesh. Those are the three categories. Teva meant that either sense perception, that's muchashim, or what he calls muskalos rishonos. That means basic intellectual principles, like 2 is greater than 1. And I'm going to add in 1 minute, like language means what it says. Okay, so if I say this is the first words of David HaMelech, it means there must be last words. So, but that's all in the teva, he says. He also brings down that word. It's in the teva of language. Those are called muskalos rishon. That means that there's certain natural ways that we communicate ideas, and things mean what they say in a very simple way. As Rashi always says, derech pashat, the literal meaning, before we get to dochek meanings, or before we get to ramazim and gematrias and all these other high levels. Okay, so that's called derech teva. Muskalos rishonos and muchashim is what you physically see, okay, with your eyes, or you physically feel with your hand, or any of the other physical senses. The second group is called haskama, and haskama he breaks into two parts: the meforsim and the mekubal. The meforsim means that people people in the community will agree about it. Like, you know, we in our community say that gaiva is not a good trait, and humility is a good trait. Maybe in some other cultures they don't agree with it, but that's meforsam, means that everyone holds this to be true. Okay, like the Declaration of Independence, we hold these truths to be self-evident. Well, we hold them to be self-evident, but I guess the King of England didn't. But that's what they were saying. These are before some that they're truth, that all men are created equal, and all these things like that. Okay, that was a debate, but that's what they said. Now, the second type of haskama is not that a group of people will want something, but what he calls it mikubalot. Mikubalot means that we have a tradition that things are true. It's not a an umdana, just people hold that way, but it's a tradition. So he puts in that box of mekubalo the fact that we hold that what says in the Torah and all the Chachamim is considered true. That's what he calls mekubalot. And the third type of proof is a proof mitzad hekesh. And he brought two types here, that if you can take a statement and show that it's the result of two hekeshim, you've proved it's true, or if you show that the opposite of the statement, you prove it false, it'll also be true. So that's the side of bringing proofs to things, and then he uses the same system on the other side, except he adds some other interesting variations when you want to prove something false, i.e. that it called an argument ad absurdum. It goes, if what you're saying is true, to lead to a false conclusion, or mamanav shach. No matter which way you turn, you won't be able to solve it. So that's a very, very, 2-second, whatever it is, 5-second overview. Why do I want to bring this up? Because in our investigation of the Shach, we see that the Shach is bringing proofs and disproofs from these categories, and it's just very interesting to watch it. So let's go to our text. Okay. Oh, I see. I'll have to do it this way. Let's just keep it that way. I just want to keep this up there so we can get it. All right. So here's the Shach. Now, the Shach tells us first what he wants to discuss about. Remember, we learned in those good books that always look at the divrei maskil. That's the key. That's the subject line. The subject line, the email, the subject line when you're doing a brief, the subject line when you're giving a class, and the subject line, of course, when Talmidei Chachamim speak. You have to know exactly what is the subject that's on the floor. And what the subject on the floor is that the Shulchan Aruch says, "Gova mina metalton techila," that when you collect here we go. Here's the Shulchan Aruch. Kashebeistin niskakan ligvos lenizach minechnasei hamazik govin mehametalton techila. You first collect from the mazik metalton. And if he doesn't have metalton or not enough metalton, then go on asham meha karka. And then you collect the rest from the karka. Okay? So that's what he says. And that's our problem. Our problem, or whatever we'll be commenting on now, is the concept that from a mazik, we first collect from his metalton, and then only after that we go to the land. And we pointed out that if we're going to hold that's really what the Shulchan Aruch is saying, so that's going to cause us problems understanding the Gemara, because our Gemara, when we were learning it, according to the Rosh and Rashi and Rabbeinu Tam and those people, it seemed as if Meitav was equal to Kesev and Metalton was worse, or Meitav was equal to Kesev and Metalton was equal, and we didn't see any place where Metalton falls in line after Kesev, that Meitav falls in line after Metalton. We never saw. So we explained that people, in order to keep the halacha with all those good people, Rashi and the Rif and the Rambam, not Rashi and the Rif and the Torah, no, Rashi, the Rif and the, and the Rush, will reread the Shulchan Aruch and will reread the Torah. The first one that does that is the Sma. The Sma says it looks as if you read it, that we're giving a precedent of Metalton over Karka, but it's not true. We're talking about when the Mazik is not around. Okay, Ein HaMazik Lifneinu. That's the only time we give it. But if the Mazik was around, then Yad Mazik Al Yona, he can give any one of the three. And that's what the Sma said. And he said that the Shulchan Aruch is not like the Beis Yosef when he commented on the Torah, because when he commented on this, he said because of this problem with Balchov, so we're going to say that you really do collect metaltalin first. And the issue shows the Beis Yosef. Okay, so that's when we look at the Divrei Maskil. So the first Divrei Maskil was Gov Metaltalin Techila. The Shach brings us the Sma, and the Sma learns that text with an Akimta. He says the text is not meant to be understood literally, but it's meant to be understood as when the mazik is not around. And it's that the Shach now is going to attack. That he's going to say the Sma is incorrect. And we're going to have to read the Rambam literally, that you first collect the metaltalin, and then only if he doesn't have metaltalin do you go to karka. And that will be the Shulchan Aruch and the Torah, and here is the statement of intention subject line of the Shach. He says the das of the Rambam, the Machaber, is like the Shoshan, which means literally you collect first from metaltalin, then karka, and also that's the das of the Tur and the Shar Poskim, whoever they are, and that's going to be Iker Kamoshes, to show you that that really is true, that the halacha is that you really do collect from metaltalin before karka. And I'm going to prove that to you, says Shach. So the first proof he brings, and this is why, but that was just a statement of the subject line. He's going to disprove the Sma and prove the opposite is true. How is he going to do it? Well, first he's going to do it from and here's why I brought the Ramchal, Kubalot. What does that mean? Mitzati b'nemuki Yosef reish perak ha-mocher perish shekatav lehedja. That the Rambam says, when it comes to Nezikin, isle lakarko metaltalin kafinin le liten lo metaltalin over there. So the Nemuki Yosef, I won't flash back to it, says the words in the Rambam must be taken literally, that the mazik must give the metaltalin first. Okay, so that's why we call that in our system of the Ramchal, that's called a raya from Haskama. It's called a Mekubal. It didn't. An authority called the Nemuki Yosef said that in the Rambam. Okay, so we don't have to say that. So we have a proof here that according to this authority, the Rambam really is saying literally you collect first from metaltalin and then only after that the karka. So that's the first proof, raya mitzad mekubala. Okay, the second proof. The second proof is v'chein mashma vadai pashmi divrei Rambam. It's mashma pashmi divrei Rambam. The words of the Rambam say it. If you don't start setting up the Rambam in strange case, like mazik not around, that's what he says. Quote, kasha based in iskapin go metaltalin techila. Mashma dalei the based in arami ligbos techila metaltalin. He says when the based in is going to collect, it does from the metaltalin first. And he adds that's the din and eno tali baratz and mazik o nizak, which we spoke about a little, but he holds that's the shach. This is the din. The shoftim say to the mazik, you are obligated now to pay. What do you have? Oh, you have all three items. You must, you have metaltalin, you have karka. You must first pay from your metaltalin, only then give the karka. That's the din. Now, what type of raya is this? Okay, so here I wanted to say this is what's called a raya mitzad teva. And because that's a muskal rishon. What's muskal rishon? That means, and the Ramchal used the word teva. The teva of the language tells us what it means. Correct? So that's a muskal rishon. The words say it. Now, if you're going to say otherwise, so then you're not following the natural meaning of the language. So that's the second thing of raya mitzad teva. Okay. You see what I'm doing here? I'm talking a lot, but what I'm trying to do here is to integrate our learning into this piece, because the truth is that all the great rabbis speak this way. This is what the Ramchal says Darkei HaKodesh is. Darkei HaKodesh is that you make it, and then you prove it. And you have to prove it, not only prove that you're correct, but the other side is incorrect. And that Shaklavataria is the basis of all our learning. And he says, and he calls it Darkei Kodesh. So it's very important to see it and to start using these labels a little. Okay, you with me?
Yep, I'm here.
Okay, very good. I always give these long introductions. What happens is I think about these things, and we have a whole week, so my head is in it. So it,
Fine.
and, what I mean? It's a good chazara and also good integration, because we've been far away from the Ramchal for a while. Okay, just trying to figure out what people are saying. So. Okay, so that now we get to the third one. He brings another proof that the Rambam says that you call metaltalin first. Well, let's see what he says. He says it's excuse me. Now the third one is not a proof that the Rambam is correct, but this is going to be a proof that the Sma is incorrect. Okay, so how is he going to prove the Sma is incorrect? Because he's going to quote another din, both the subsequent din of the Rambam and the Tur. And that's the din of Yasamim. When it came to Yasamim, both the Rambam and the Tur write, if the mazik dies and he leaves metaltalin and karka, govin me Yasamim karkaos. You cut from the orphans, you collect from their karka, not from their metaltalin. Wow, what type of proof is that? He says, "V'im isay de mistama nichalei lamazik tvei liten metaltalin." If, according to you, Sma, that when the mazik is not around, and he certainly is not around here, he's dead, and the Beis Din is supposed to figure out what he would have rather given, so then let the Beis Din claim for the Yisomim metaltalin, give them metaltalin. And he says, "Ve'ech yigra kocho hayasamim in a mazik atzmo." How could all of a sudden the yasamim come out to have less power than the mazik? So this type of proof is a proof through hekesh. Okay, because we take this case, which is analogous to our case, and we show that if you hold, it's actually a disproof. It's proving that the Shema is wrong. So it's a raya macheshes, by showing that if what you're saying is true, then it should have happened. The din should have been that here. I mean, the Beis Din should have said to the Yisomim, give the Nizak Metaltalin, because that's what your father who's dead would have given. And we see it's not so. So here's a proof through Hekesh that we don't, the Beis Din doesn't try to figure out what the Mazik would have given at all. Why the din is this way? Well, we have to explain it, but it definitely doesn't work according to the system of the Sma. All right. Now, we said that derech is not only to explain your position, but you have to explain the other side. And here he explains very interestingly, he brings down all these other people, okay, who actually hold that you can give metaltalin or karka equally. Okay, so that's the other position. And what he's going to do, he's going to say that that's very nice, there are definitely all these wonderful people that hold that way, but that does not happen to be the Rambam. Okay, so you explain what was the premise that the Sma built his Okimta in the Shulchan Aruch and subsequently in the Ram, or consequently in the Rambam, and you explain that that's why you're making your mistake, because the premise of your argument is based on the Rush and the Mordechai and the Rabbeinu Tam, and even what the Muchi says in the name of the Meforshim and all these other wonderful people who are not holding sheets as a Rambam. Okay, they're holding that all three items are equal. So here is a very interesting thing. He now explains why you might want to make an akimta in the Shulchan Aruch and the Tur, and to say things like the mazik is not around. Well, that's because you have been prejudiced by this whole wonderful group of Rishonim that hold that there is no priority of Metalton over Meitav. Okay? However, the Ram disagrees with that. Disagrees with it. Okay? Now, what's the critical point of disagreement, the pivotal point here? It's going to be on how we understand the machlokus between Rav Huna and Rav Papa. So we're going to see that the Rambam has a different way of understanding that machlokus. All right, so we're going to give a new parish to the Rambam of those memorim that is not the parish of the what we say, the other side of the standard people. What was that? What was that parish? Okay, unlike, let's just go back over here. We have all these charts here. Unlike the Rif, the Rashi, the Rabbeinu Tam, and the Rush that learned the machlokas between Rav Papa and Rav Huna, was really, look at it, what the position of metaltalin was. I mean, Rav Papa said that metaltalin, of course, is equal to Kesef and is equal to Meitav, and Rav Huna said not. That's how we've been learning all the time. So, and the halacha is according to Rabbeinu Tam, it had to be Rav Huna, but according to the Rush, who's the father of the Tur, the halacha was like Rav Papa. That's what the Rif said clearly, and therefore all three things are equal. So now the Rambam, however, is not going to read those Gemaras that way, and that's where we're holding now. Okay, so how are we going to explain how the Rambam reads those Gemaras? So here, oops, if you can try to get him in the middle here. Okay, here's the Rambam according to the Shach, and he's going to say it's not only me, it's the Rabbeinu Hanan and a lot of other people, but this is how he's going to learn it. So let's just say it outside first, and then we'll go back inside to him. He's Mechadesh, that means the Shach is Mechadesh, that when Rav Huna said, O Kesef o Meitav, he meant Kesef l'chatchila, and if you don't have Kesef, you give Meitav. O Kesef l'chatchila, and if you don't have it, then you give Meitav. Nachman said, but wait a minute, what about metaltalin? He says that's if you don't have Kesef. So surely Kesef is before Meitav, and the only question is, what do you do with metaltalin? It's not the third choice, and Rav Huna said that's if you don't have Kesef, but of course Kesef is greater than Meitav, and metaltalin is just under Kesef, so you'll see that metaltalin is greater than Meitav. That's what he did. Okay, now that doesn't give us the din in the Rambam, because the Rambam, according to the Shulchan Aruch, is going to hold that Kesef is equal to metaltalin. How do we get that din? Well, now we're going to just, says the Shach, look at Rav Papa's position. Rav Papa argued with Rav Huna about metaltalin, and he said metaltalin is equal to Kesef. So he agreed with Rav Huna that Kesef is greater than Meitav, but he said Kol Milei is called Meitav chutz mi Ara. Ara called Meitav, and the Meitav here is being used in a second sense. It's the best of the worst. So Kesef is equal to metaltalin, says Rav Papa, and of course Meitav is in second position. So and the Rambam is holding like Rav Papa, which is very nice, because then we don't have to worry about pasrori problems, and he can be with the Rif and all those nice people. So that's how the Shach is going to explain that the Rambam read the Machlokus Rav Huna and Rav Papa. He created what we called an unequal or statement, Kesef l'chatchila and Meitav b'diavad, and then when Rav Nachman said, what do you do metaltalin? He said, that's when you don't have Kesef. Okay? Rav Papa just disagreed about one point, really, where metaltalin was. And he said metaltalin is equal to Kesef, and it's not less than Kesef, that's all. And that's the how the Shach is now going to explain the Rambam, and the halacha is like Rav Papa. Now you'll say, why would you want to read the Gemara that way? At this point, we will talk about the Baal Chov, you see. The Baal Chov is now, he's going to explain to us, the Baal Chov now is going to force us, because the in Baal Chov, remember, that you collect with Kesef before Karka. Okay, the only question is in Baal Chov, what's the position of Metaltalin? But if we say that there's an analogy between the Zikin and Baal Chov, meaning that in both cases Kesef is greater than Karka, then our only problem here at Reb Papa is we'll be talking about Metaltalin. Of course, everything is greater than Karka. The only question is Metaltalin equal to Kesef or less. So that's going to be our involvement. Now, what type of proof is this? This is proofs through analogy. Okay, we said there's a lot of vacation, but one hekesh is called a analogy or a mamatzino. Mamatzino means what we see here is equal to this other case, and therefore the din will be the same. So the whole discussion here about how we read our Gemara is going to really depend upon whether we introduce Baal Chov into the equation or not, which is a very exciting development. Why do I say that? Because in the learning process, there's what's in front of us on the page and what it means. And then the Ramchal says you have to know what our statement is in relationship to other statements. Okay, if they're analogous, so there's going to be a transfer of laws from one to the next. So now we're off the page, so to speak, and we're saying that our machlokus between Rav Papa and Rav Huna is being influenced by Baal Chov, and that will be the machlokus Rishonim. The Rosh will say it is not influenced in Baal Chov, and therefore all three things will be equal, and Metaltalin can be the less. But if you hold that Baal Chov, which puts a precedent of Kesef over Karka, is analogous to our case of Nezikin, so then you will learn it here. What?
Yeah, that was just filling in. That if Baal Chov is analogous to Nezikin, then you're going to have to say that the Nezikin is like Baal Chov with regard to the level of Kesef.
Exactly. Exactly. And that's a question of analogy. Analogy means are the two cases equal or not, and that's a svara. The Russ says a svara really to break them off. We don't have a Gemara that says it. The Russ says a svara. He says since the Malva gave money, has a right to get it back. There's no Gemara that way. That's a svara to break. We said how do you break an analogy? How do you break a mamatzinu? To show that the two cases are not equal. Okay. The Nemuki Yosef said you may want to break the analogy because in Baal Chov you pay Beinanis and in Nezikin you pay Meitab, so you can't move the dinim across. And he says that's not a problem because that is not a difference that'll make a difference. But we'll have to, without going into that in depth. But our basic the excitement here is really whether we're going to make an analogy between Nezikin and Baal Chov. If we do, we're going to end up, says the Shach, with the Rambam, and if learning the Rambam this way. If we don't, then we're going to end up with the Rush and all those other people. So that's where we are holding, as I said, with all. After thinking about this for a long time and trying to make it as clear as possible. All right, so let's back to the Shach. So as we said, the Shach explains why people would want to make an okimta, which is called, again, we didn't do Ramchal. You can have a perish meruvach and a perish dachuk. Right? Perish meruvach means it fits very, very nicely into the language. Dachuk means that you have to push it in. It's not exactly what the text says. Could be that's what it means, but it doesn't say it. Okay. So if you're not going to hold there's an analogy between Baal Chov and Nezikin, then you're going to end up with the Rush and the Mordechai and Rabbeinu Tam, at least when it comes to explaining Rev Huna, that there's an equal or between Kesef and Meitav, right? But if you're going to be like the Rambam, who says that there is an analogy, and then all of a sudden when you read Rev Huna, when he said, "O Kesef or Meitav," you'll read it like the Shach says, like I said it, which means "O Kesef" first, and only if you don't have Kesef you give Meitav. Okay, and then he was asked about Metaltlin, that comes in right under Kesef. So that's the exciting explanation of the Shach. Okay, very, very beautiful way of explaining the Rambam in its simple way. Okay. Wow. Someone asked me, "Do people understand what you don't?" I said, "Yeah. If you study it enough, you're familiar with the text. You know." So imagine, I mean, if someone got up and gave class in front of people, I mean, how many people could, you know, if not prepared, you have to be prepared. Baruch Hashem, we're prepared, and we know what's going on. Okay. Now, that is to learn that Pshat in Rav Huna, to say that the O is not an equal O, is a very big Chiddush in language, because again, Raya Mitzad Muskal Rishon, when you say an O, it's an equal O. So he says he has to bring proof to that. So he brings a proof that he's correct from the Baal HaTrum, the Sefer HaTrum that quotes Rabbeinu Hananel. Okay, and Rabbeinu Hananel makes the statement. We looked inside. Of course, we want to look inside again, but we're trying to move forward a little. Rabbeinu Hananel says, "Meichachav," in the case of Rav Huna, Shaminan the lo misalchan lebalcho ba'ara. From here, in the case of Nezikin, we learn that we don't get rid of a debt with land, ella, except, hey, the kamlan the leis le zuze lemifrei mimnei, only when you don't have money. So he says, from this case of Rav Huna, we learn that if the lova has kesef and karka, forget kesef and karka, he must give kesef first. And the Rabbeinu Hananel said, we learn it from our case of Rav Huna, right? So how could that possibly be, says the Gedulei Truma. Everyone argued, well, how could the Rabbeinu Hananel make such a statement? Where do you see in Rav Huna that there's a precedent of kesef over karka, such that will make an analogy to Balchov? So we just told you, if you learn an unequal or, right, then you can have it. Now, as I just said it over, you notice, it seems that the direction of the way he's reading the Rabbeinu Hananel is the direction is from here, from Nezikin, learn to the case of Balchov. Well, that's the opposite of what we just said. We said Balchov was going to push the definition, push the unequal or into Nezikin. So that's a little bit of a distinction, but we would, we have to think about that. But the Shach wants to say, how could the Rabbeinu Hananel learn from our case of Rav Huna that in the case of Balchov, you have to give kesef before karka? How could he possibly learn it? So he says, you see, must be like I'm learning that O was an unequal or, and it meant kesef l'chatchila. If you don't have kesef, then you have to give metaltlin. And therefore, that is analogous to our case of Balchov, that if you have kesef and karka, you give kesef first, and there you have Rabbeinu Hananel. Okay? Now, the Gedulei Truma writes a parish on the Sefer Truma, and he attacks the Rabbeinu Hananel. And he says, I can't understand it. And again, if you look at it, we have to look at it carefully, of course, but he'll be going back to the same arguments that O is an equal O. And that's how Tosfos learned that as an equal O, and that's how Rashi learned that as equal O. And so how did you come on to this unequal O? It doesn't make any sense. Okay, but he says that, look, that's what the Rabbeinu Hananel did. He understood it. That was Rav Huna was saying. Then he brought the Rivan. We last week. Not so easy to understand the Rivan, but he wants to say the Rivan holds the same way. And then he brings the Ram in the Nemuki Yosef. So let's see what the Nemuki Yosef said about the Ramah. Okay, he says Shekol haposkim halacha kareb papa Reb Huna berei Reb Yeshua. Let's look at that. Okay. Okay. Let me do. There's two. There's two of them. Here I have. Here's the line. Okay. Let's read together this Nemuchi Yosef, okay? And let's see what he wants to say. So you can now. I'm going to put you on the floor. Please read a little, okay? This.
Right from there.
Yeah. Okay. So I put it in gray. The pasuk, right? Bal habo yishalem kesev yashiv l'bal.
The Michti, the Chassid Balaba Yishalem Kesef Yashav Lamali. Basically, he's asking the Ramiyah of Abayit Rava. Leimi Yishalem Kesef Labalav Labai Yashav.
Now he's making a dikun in language first.
Okay.
Right. He's just saying, why did the pasuk say Bal Habor Yishalem Bal Habor Yishalem Kesef Yashiv Labalav? Cut out the word Yashiv. Right? And just say Baal Habor Yishalem Kesef LeBaalav. Why do we? He's showing why this word Yashiv is extra. Okay? You with me?
Right.
Michte de Kasef Baal Habor Kesef Yashiv Lav. Why do I need this extra word? Just cut it out.
Why do we need Yashiv?
Okay.
Okay.
Lema, what should you say?
Okay.
Yes.
Ella. Let it just say Ella. The Rabbi Shava Kesef. The Yashiv is coming to include Shava Kesef Afilu Subin. The mashmakar shavos.
Okay. How do we know Afilu Subin?
He's saying mashma kar shavos. The word yashiv has a inference of including anything.
Whatever you're going to return, right? Anything, even.
And anything that he gives is meitav.
Stop. Okay, so he says everyone's holding like Rav Papa, Rav Huna, Rav Yeshua, right? That what? What's the conclusion over here? That you can give even subin. In other words, when you give metaltalin, you can give a metaltalin, right?
Right.
Okay.
So that's what he says. So that's the Muki Yosef.
That's the first part. Now we can.
Right. Ksivra Mazal.
I added the word benezikin. I added nezikin. I should have been gray, but just put it in.
Hadamat Yav Afilu Subin. Hanim Yilhechad Lasfel Mazik Zuzi. This that you give subin is only where the mazik does not have the zuzim. So it's not an equal preference, like it would sound like from the Nemuki Yosef. But he's saying that there's a condition, that the condition is that only if he doesn't have zuzim, then he can give subin.
Right. So the first stage, and I just want to be clear about this as we go through it again and again, the first stage is just to say that in metaltalin does not admit of madregas. It doesn't. There's no madregas in metaltalin. There's no meitav in metaltalin. Even subin is. That's the first step. Now we have another problem. Whether Kesef has a priority over metaltalin. Right. So he says, according to the Nemuki Yosef.
The Nemuki Yosef. Well, the Ramah doesn't. The
Ramah, exactly.
The Ramah is saying that Kesef comes first. And then if he doesn't have kesef, then he could give subin.
Correct.
So this kesef is definitely first, subin is second. The Ramukiyes was quoting the Ramah. It could be he holds the Ramah, could be he doesn't. Doesn't he hold like him.
Okay. That's another good question, but he does quote him. Okay, and he continues, and he says,
The din is true also for Baal Chayiv.
now I don't know who's talking here, by the way. I don't know if it's a continuation of the Ramah or the Nemuki Yosef started talking. That always bothered me. Okay, but whatever it is, what we're going to import the din from Nezikin to Balchov. And I don't, that's also not said properly. The two cases are analogous. Okay, I don't know how the learning happens, but the two cases are analogous. So what goes on in the Zikin, i.e. the preference of Kesef over Subin, is going to apply to Balchov. Right? The inner workings we don't know. It start in Balchov, move to Nezikin, it start in Nezikin, move down to Balchov. We don't know. Okay? Okay.
So that's Baal Chayiv. So he's saying Baal Chayiv is the same, but there's a preference to Kesef first, and then to Subin.
Correct.
The Gabe Mekach Tois, the Havale Meicha Ke Gazlan, with regard to Mekach Tois, I guess that means that what's the case of Mekach Tois, where the buyer was not aware?
The buyer wants, the buyer buys an ox. He thinks the ox is for plowing. It turns out to be for, he was a gorer, right? So he goes back to the mocher and he says, oh, my dear friend, what did you give me an ox, this type of ox for? So the din is in all sorts of conditions, but basically it was mekachtos. So now the buyer wants his money back.
Right.
Okay?
So first of all, the Mukhi says that mekachtos is like a gazlan, avle meicher ke gazlan.
Right.
I guess that's if he did it intentionally.
Yeah, that's an interesting, again, analogies here, you see? Analogies. Right. But he says mekachtos, yeah, he's trying to rip off the guy. That's what normally a mekachtos is, like you said, intentionally. Right. Okay.
The gazlan chad michavdalad avos nezikin legabe meitav. I mean, perak hameicher gabe hameicher shar lechaveirai.
This is the Gemara of Mekos.
Either leka lishtalu mina lishkal tura bezuzi. Yamin hasam the iyas lezuzi lamat yamal lishkal tura bezuzi. So you see clearly that Mekach follows the same pattern as we're saying by Baal Chayiv and prior to that by Nezikin, that Zuzi comes first. Because
right.
It says it clearly. If he has Zuzi, he cannot tell him Shkol Tura B'Zuzi.
Right.
He has to take this. He has to give him the Zuzim.
Right. Okay. Very good. Now he adds. Now,
until now he didn't say that he had a proof or he had a svara, how he knows that Baal Chayiv has the same din, but there's a preference to Kesef. Now it sounds like he's going to say there's a mashmais, that Baal Chayiv has that din, from
right.
Perak HaKaisef, Gabeahu Taila Ma'isa Ba'akum Haba, that there was somebody who said that his money was by the guy. What was that case again?
The case was that the lova has some nice money on the table. The malva comes and says, "I'd like my loan back. So give me the money." He says, "Oh, this money belongs to a guy. It's not my money." Okay, so he had a right to the money. And then there's a whole, again, there's a few Gemaras that we didn't do. We're going to have to, as I said, go carefully into all these different Gemaras. But let's be a little sloppy here and just say, over there we see that the Malva had a right to demand the money. Okay, and the only reason why he couldn't take the money was because the Lova said it's not his money. Okay, but normally, he can take the money. He doesn't have to take land. Okay, anyway, that case over there was something we're really going to have to look into. Okay, but let's just agree with him that case over there shows that in a loan, if you have money and karka, you, the malva, have a right to demand money. Okay, it's mashma hachika. Other people may disagree, but it's mashma. He just wants to bring again another rise. You said the connection between Nezikin and Baal Chov is a svara.
Right.
And now he wants to bring a raya from an actual case of Malva and Baal Chov, that when you have money, you can demand it over the karka. Okay.
Right.
All right. Now, v'chein mashma.
Milish and Damin and Hacha.
Here in that case, Nezikin.
Di'ila mizdaven hacha, mizdaven hacha. Tishamina mina, dekula milsa lizmune le linizik, the main nizikim bezuzi. Wow, okay. That's very interesting. The lashon of the Gemara is mashma that there's a preference to kesef. Why? Because what's the svara that you could give metaltalin, di'ila mizdaven hacha, mizdaven hacha. The mashmais of that is that the whole purpose is to be able to obtain cash.
Yes.
And since the whole purpose is to obtain cash, it must be that cash is the first preference. Zuzim
Right.
is the first preference.
Right.
The chivan de mehai taimahu, since that's the reason why it could be any metaltalin is equal, the mela mashma the chiyus le'lamaz zuzim mechayiv l'meisav le'zuzi.
Right. Now, there's another beautiful mashma'ut, okay, because nothing's written black and white, but he reads Reb Papa and he says, look, when Reb Papa said that kol mile meitav, bar mi'ara. Now, what's the essential quality that separates from ara? That if
Whether it's
you
movable.
meaning the mazdab menachi, right? That you're going to get your money back, right?
Right.
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 So since that's the svara that made metaltalin better than karka, that you can get your money back because there's more customers. So he says it's mashma that metaltalin should also be better than meitav. Excuse me. If you have the real thing,
right, that's better
and metaltalin, right, exactly. So if you have zuzay, it should also be zuzay should be better than metaltalin. Since again, an analogy, if subin is better than karka because it could be translated into money easier than karka, so then the money itself, which doesn't need translation, should even be better than that.
Right.
Okay, so that's a svara that he says in our case of it's mashma.
It's a svara. It's a mashma.
Well, I don't know. You're right. It's not really a svara. It's mashma from the way that we analyze the relationship of metaltalin and kesef. That kesef should have a priority over metaltalin.
Right, because if you're comparing everything to kesef, you're saying, well, I could sell a metaltalin here and sell it there for the same value. It must be the goal is to get the cash. Otherwise, why are we talking about how you're going to sell it?
Right. But notice it's you don't have a what I say is svara because you don't have a solid proof here. But it's mistavra. It's mistavra.
It's mistabra that this mashmois is a good mashmois. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. It's mistavra that exactly. Okay. So now let's go a little weiter. Geen hadin b'Baal Chov. Now he's saying, look. Now you see what's happening here is very, very delicate. We don't know if this case of Nezikin is going to show us about Baal Chov or Baal Chov is going to show us about Nezikin. That's where we started off today. Okay. Here it looks as if he's saying, look, if you look at the case of Nezikin and if you look at the case of Reb Papa, you'll see that there's a preference of kesef over metaltalin in Reb Papa. and that
of metaltalin over.
there's a kesef of, I'm sorry, there's a taste, there's a, say here, mashmalei islay lamazik zay mechayiv leisei le. Kesef. There's a kesef is first.
Right.
All right? Since we're looking about everything in terms of kesef, then kesef itself should be first. That's what, that's how he understands Rapapa over here. Okay? And now he says we can now move that through analogy to Babalchov. V'chein hadin Babalchov. So it looks as if here, if I were to analyze which way the analogy is going, or I say what's my given and what's the tolda, what's the result, it looks as if from this setup, the Nemuch Yosef is saying that Nezikin is telling us as a preference of Kesef over Subin and Metaltalin, of course. And we're going to now say that Din should exist in Balchov also, right? Now you may want to, again, Dirk Tfunos, there's the way that you build an analogy, a mamatzinu, and the way you destroy a analogy. The way you destroy analogy is to say the two cases are not similar. They have a critical difference. Okay? So now the Ran is going to bring a way that you might want to break up this analogy because the dinim are different. In Malva, the din is Baininus, and in the Nezek, it's the case of Idis, so maybe the cases are not analogous. Maybe the difference in din there will impact on the preference of Kesef in Nezikin, for instance. So since already Nezikin is more chumrah that you only have to give the best of your land, maybe it's more chumrah that you have to give Kesef in front of Metaltalin in front of land, but maybe that's not true in Balchov because that's only Baininus. So now he wants to remove that distinction and level the ground. And what does he say? Chena din b'Balchov. Go ahead.
Chena din b'Balchov de had de gora koi choi de milve de Baininus. Having shum chashasha shema yikbait v'yol venu b'hale shayach el b'karka d'leimatzi la'avruche lei aval metaltali bezuzi delekala memar lahaytaima yafakayach. So he's saying like this. He's saying that maybe you should say that Baal Chayv should not have the preference of Zuzim. Why? Because there's a chashash that maybe he'll jump and lend to the leva, I guess for the ultimate goal of taking away his karka.
Yes.
And why is it not possible to chase him away? I don't know what the case
okay,
is.
So that,
that only applies to karka because he can't chase him away?
Let's go slowly. I'm with you. The hod the grew a kocho the malva bebenis. Now, why does malva have a weaker din that it only collects baininus and not idis?
Okay, so he's explaining that there's a chashash that will come out that the leva will probably wind up losing his karka.
Right. In other words, we have an unscrupulous malva. In other words, the din should really be idis malva. It really should be idis. But if the din were idis, then we'd have an unscrupulous money lender that will say, I'm going to trap this poor schnook and get his best land.
Karka.
Right? I'll get his best land by just loaning him some. Oh, would you like to borrow some money, sir? And he knows he'll never be able to pay it back. And then he'll rip off his good land. Right? So that's why the Torah, and again, if the Torah Rabbanan, I don't exactly know here, but that's why the din dropped down to Baininus, to get rid of that Yetzer Hara on the side of the Malva. Because the Malva is just going to end up with some Baininus land. He's not going to, risk, loaning his money out just to get some Baininus land. It's not an attractive deal. Okay?
Right.
So he says, in the case of Nezikin, that chashash doesn't exist, right? Because the nizak didn't say, I want this guy's best land. How could I do it? You know what? Make him damage me, and then I'll get his best land. That's an impossibility, right? Okay?
Right.
So there, of course, the nizak gets the best land. But the malva has to be pushed down to Baininus because there, the nizak, I'm sorry, can push down Baininus because there the malva could entrap the lova, right?
Right.
Now he says, V'ho lo shayach ela b'karka. Now this svara, to make a distinction between the case of malva and the case of nezikin, is limited to the case of karka. Okay? Why? The lo matzilav ruchele. Because in karka, the malva can't get rid of it very easily. It's like a physical entity. Money is, when the minute you give him the money, or if the lova, has objects, right? He can always, quickly, make it disappear. No one will ever find the objects, right? I don't have any money. I don't have any objects. But land, he can't make it disappear. 1, 2, 3. It's there, and has shibud and all these fancy things. So there, the only reason to make a distinction between nezikin and malva is in the case of land. Aval metaltlin and zuzeh, lekelamei mahai taima. But
so the labor won't lose his property.
Right. The malva is not attracted to the metaltlin of the lova, right? Such that he'll loan him money to try to grab it, right? Because the lova can always slip away that metaltlin. It's just, he can level. He could just give it to his children. He can get rid of it real quickly. So there's no real excitement on the side of a malva trying to entrap a lova. When it comes to land, it's physically there, so the lova says, this is an easy take, right? I'll just be able to get him into a loan situation, shibud situation, take his land away. So there, the Torah said, or the Rabbanim, which one it is, we haven't decided yet, push it down. No, don't make it attractive. Don't make it what's called an attractive damage. Knock it down to Baininus. But when it came to metaltlin, there's no reason to say that the malva is going to be running after the metaltlin.
Right.
And therefore, he says, aval metaltlin v'zuzeh, in those two things, lekelamei mahai taima, there's no entrapment. So there, yafi koach. What does that mean? There, balchov.
If we give the malva the upper hand, and we're going to give him the zuzim. Right. Exactly. Because there we can make an analogy between nezikin and balchov. Right? The only reason when we say there's a weakness and we can't make an analogy in balchov, that's only when it comes to land. But in zuzeh and metaltlin, no question about it, there we'll say they're analogous. And just like in nezikin, there's a preference of money over metaltlin, so too in balchov. Okay? Now he says, continue. Venire, he continues. V'cheinira.
Yes.
If he has both metaltlin and ara, he can't give him ara. The metaltli adifit tfelai taima la'azmuni lezuzi. Because since we now understand that the best thing to give him is zuzi, what's closer to zuzim? Metaltlin.
Why? Now he says a svara.
Oh, wow. That's not what I would have said.
I wouldn't have said it either.
Because you don't have to announce it. You don't have to make an auction. You could just go from person to person. You can sell it easily, I guess.
Yeah, just put up exactly. So many people out there in the shuk, right? You don't have to say for sale sign, get the guys coming around. What do you want? Do you want? 3 guys interested, go over to them. Right. Okay.
Right. You have right with the okay. And number two is a krach. And ami mashma the hedya the hedya ksev bachutz tamoid. Oisavei al beis alavot. The stomach the islay bias mashma. Wow. I've never thought of that one either.
What is he doing here?
Never have thought of that one. So he's saying that, what is he doing? He can't get paid back, so he's coming to take a mashkin. Right? That's the.
I think he's collecting the loan.
Take the mashkin.
Is it the mashkin? No, it's the loan. The malva is coming to collect loan, and the rule is the malva has to stay outside the poor man's house, right?
Right.
The Torah says to him, "B'chutz tamod." Don't go into the guy's house and start, bothering him. Hey, I want this, I want this. Stand outside, Mr. Malva, and request your loan, right? V'lo tavo eso la'avot. Don't go to the house to collect your loan. Don't go inside the house to collect your loan. So says the Nemuki Yosef, the stama de islay bias mashva.
In other words, but what's the point? The stama islay bias, and the point is that he's not taking the house away.
Exactly. That's what he wants to learn. This
he didn't get paid back. The problem is that this malva didn't get paid back just yet. Right?
Right.
So there's an ongoing exchange between this malva and this leva, and the malva is telling the leva is telling the malva, stand outside. You can't come in and take anything from me. And he says, why not? So why doesn't the malva just take the house? Is that what he's saying?
Let's be a little careful. The pasuk says to the malva, you must wait outside and wait till the lova takes out from his house what he needs.
Right.
So he's saying, wait a minute, we're talking about a case where a lova has a house, right? And he has metaltalin. So if you're going to tell me that the mazik can take karka before metaltalin, how come he's not taking his house away?
Right. That's right. Right. Okay. We're saying the same thing, I think.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, something here. Okay. So again, all these things have to be really, considered carefully.
Right.
What do we see here? The Nemuki Yosef is actually learning the din in Balcho from our case in the Zikin.
Right.
So the Shach now says, wait a minute, gentlemen, it must be Nezikin, as I said to you, has a preference of Kesev over Metaltalin.
Right.
Or and of course, Kesev over Karka. And then Mamela, it's going to be also over Metaltalin. Again. Okay. If we're going to make an analogy to our case of Balchov, right? So it has to be that metaltalin is greater than karka, or kesef is greater than karka. Which one? Both of them actually. Okay. So how could you say, if you're going to say that kesef is equal to karka, so you'll never get to this position that Kesef has a preference over it. So I'll tell you that I'm correct, that Rav Huna said, O Kesef, and if you don't have Kesef, Meitav. And when it's about Metalton, he just said that that's second best to Kesef. But of course, both of these are better than Meitav. And Rav Papa, of course, says they're both equal and not Meitav. Now, this setup, by the way, is not exactly what we just read, right? That's why it's not exactly working how we just read it. Right. Why do I say that? We have to go back. Let's just see let's see what he says here. Okay, just one second. What's happening is happened in. Let's just go back here. Okay. Umuchach mid'a shehevi ha nemuche Yosef. That's what we just read. Shekol ha'poskim pasku halacha karev papa v'Rev Huna b'Rei Yeshua. V'kosav haramor ayin sham demuchach desforele haramor v'kosav. That's the Nemuch Yosef wrote about the Ramah. Demuchach desforele haramor gamken dehecha deislei lamazik metaltalin v'karka kafinin le lamesiv metaltalin go gabe balchov. This is very what it keeps happening here.
What happened?
It doesn't seem what we're reading is what he's saying. That's what's bothering me. Again, direction. What is the source and what is the target?
Right.
What is the Shach saying is the source and what is the target? What is the nilmad?
The mazik metaltalin, the karkais, kafin the mason metaltalin. So he's again. So he's going over here. So over here, he's only talking about nezikin. Right? He's not talking about balchayv. Right?
Oh.
No? Well, you're right. And he's comparing it to balchayv. So you're right. He's saying, those little extra words at the end, come on, balchayv. Sounds like he's saying, balchayv, we know already. It's pashut. That where he has metaltalin, of course, he has to give metaltalin. So that's very important. We have to underline those words.
Yeah. Say again. The Hege de Islay, he says, the Muchach, the Sforle Ramah Gamken, the Hege de Islay, la Mazik, when the Mazik has, okay?
Metaltalin.
Yeah. When it has metaltalin and karka, confinen le la mese of metaltalin. Metaltalin and karka, we force him to give metaltalin.
Right.
Like in the case of Balchov, when he has metaltalin and karka, we force him to give metaltalin.
Right. Right. Okay, I'm going to have to stop soon. So
Okay. No, okay. No problem. Okay. Okay. We just have to, our work here is, and maybe you can just look over this again, our work here is to understand the relationship, and that's how we started, between Nezikin and Balchov. What exactly is being said? Is one case the source of another case or not? Okay, and what does he want to do? Okay, what does the Shach want? There's two things here. What they say, what he says they say, and what his goal is. Those are the three things that we have to get very clear here. And what happens is we have these two cases and three variables that are constantly being juggled around, so we have to be very careful, and he's writing very quickly. So let's try to do that next time we get together, okay? If you have a chance to look at it, it would be very helpful, okay?
Okay.
All right.
Yep.
Okay, have a great day.
Very interesting. Okay.
Okay,
Very
be
good.
well.